Hello, welcome everyone. I'm going to be talking about today's big Cancer Capricorn lunar eclipse, the full moon in Cancer, which means that the sun and moon are opposing each other. And I'm also going to be talking about why I think this really has affected Australia so powerfully. I'm going to show you my sketchy little drawing, my notes, as it were, very ragged little notes that I do, that show that the sun and moon opposition is exactly on the ascendant and descendant line for Southeast Australia. And it's in the Gippsland, the Victorian Gippsland, where we are having our major fires right now. And it is hard to wake up in the morning and find the sky full of smoke. And these are huge, big wake-up calls for the whole Earth about climate change. Usually they are to do with a breaking of the continuum of life as we know it. But this one is so drastic and so huge because we've been having a build-up from the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, and last time that happened was in 1588, which was the year of the Reformation, where Luther broke away from the Catholic Church, Protestant protest. So there are a lot of protests going on right now to do with breaking down the status quo, to breaking down all the Capricornian structures, the patriarchy, all the structures that we've all been living with and accepting in conjunction, the breaking down of structures, the breaking down of the status quo, which is Saturn, the status quo, and Pluto is the huge transformation. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is right on the ascendant here in Southeast Australia. And I believe that's why we're feeling it so powerfully. So when Jupiter gets involved, and Jupiter is involved in this, is because it's in Capricorn, that just magnifies everything. And everyone is talking, I'm sure that the Oxford Dictionary word of the month is unprecedented. I'm sure that it is. And that's a very Jupiterian event, unprecedented. We've got, in the chart of the lunar eclipse, we have Mars exactly opposite the vertex, and the vertex is also dependent on the time of an event, the local time of an event. And in this chart, this local chart of the eclipse, but it's on my Instagram feed if you want to have a look. Mars is exactly opposite the vertex, which is again a very local event here. And Mars often represents explosions and fire. Very often, Mars is the planet of war. It's a red planet too. It often is symbolic of fire and war, and it's opposite the vertex. It's to do with one's fate. It's to do with what is demanded of one in the environment. And so it looks like this part of Australia has been nominated as the torchbearer, as the canary in the cage, actually, in the mind of global climate change. There are a few things that to this chart brought some grace actually to this event, in that the path of fortune was conjunct the moon in the 7th house. So the path of fortune is to do with grace and luck, good luck in business usually, and it's in the 7th house, so it's to do with partnerships. And there's been a huge response from celebrities and big corporations donating money, and so it's almost like they're forming a partnership, and that's been the grace of this. There's so much money pouring in. It's absolutely wonderful, and I think that's the path of fortune conjunct the moon in the 7th house. Ceres, also the asteroid Ceres, is conjunct the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in this chart. And Ceres is the asteroid. It's a little bit like Virgo, Ceres, but it's the harvester. It's the harvester of foods and so on. And so even though a lot of livelihoods and businesses are being disseminated by this Saturn-Pluto conjunction and by this solar eclipse and by the fires down here in Southeast Australia, Ceres is here too, probably once again to do with the enormous global responses to donations being made. So that's a grace. That's grace. And Ceres is also opposite the path of fortune. So once again, we are really being taken care of and looked after. It's really great. The Sun conjunct Mercury, which says that there's good communication, even though the internet and electricity was down. People who had radios and batteries in their radios got all the incredible communications that came through the Vic Emergency, through the ABC. With a lunar eclipse, what happens is the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon. So we actually see the shadow of the Earth reflected on the Moon. So the symbol for that is that we see our own reflection really in us, the soul, which is the Moon. Then it's usually symbolically to do with the past. And so the way I often interpret the Moon these days is that it's to do with cellular memory. And so there are many people who have been traumatized by wars or climate disasters or these traumatic patterns in their cells. You know, things will come up. And from all the people I've been meeting in the last few weeks who have been having readings with me, most people seem to be, a lot of stuff is coming up. And that's typical of a lunar eclipse. Stuff comes up for us to review, past traumas, past things that we haven't resolved, and so on. And especially in Cancer, when it's to do with Cancer, then it's going to show us something about our habit patterns. It's going to show us something about how we get our needs met, and our habits to do with that, our habitual patterns and responses to the environment. And so again, with these huge fires that are happening, we're all going to have to review our lifestyles. Everyone globally is getting the wake-up call. We're going to have to completely change our lifestyles if we want to keep on living on our planet, Mother Earth. And I think that this could be, when we look back at this time, it may be that we feel lucky, even though there have been such huge losses and sacrifices, that this was a big wake-up call again. So the other thing that I think is also showing up, that a lot of karmic stuff is coming up, a lot of karmic things from the past, not only cellular memory, but the South Node, which is also an astronomical point for those of you who know astrology, represents, those old, again, the default positions that we go to under stress or as our responses to the environment, the default things that we do. And what is actually required of us for our evolution is to do the opposite very often. So with Jupiter conjunct the South Node, there's an emphasis on our usual habitual responses to things. And it brings our awareness to these things. And because Jupiter is like a great big magnifying glass, it's going to show these things up in a really big, expansive way so that you can't miss it. You can't overlook it or sweep it under the carpet. It's going to be right there in your face. These old habitual patterns which don't serve you anymore, which aren't to do with your evolution anymore. They're to do with maybe habit patterns or default positions that are in your DNA, actually. And so that these things really can be changed. And it's been proven now that we can change our DNA. So we cannot have business as usual when we have Jupiter conjunct the South Node under a lunar eclipse chart, which with a Saturn-Pluto conjunction and Jupiter moving up coming towards that this year. And so this is for you to really examine and look at past habits and patterns and responses that haven't served you, that are just old programs that you've inherited or learned from your family or from your carers, and that aren't appropriate anymore for the times that we're moving into. They have nothing to do with your movement and evolutionary, deep adaptive process that we have to undergo right now. We have to deeply adapt to these hugely changing times. And with Jupiter conjunct the South Node, we're probably being shown what it is that we need to change about ourselves, but also as a community, and not only yourself and your local community, but the global community. We all have to change. And so in a way, this is good. Jupiter conjunct the South Node is going to make this really reveal itself to you, to us as individuals, and to the whole system. I'm seeing that the Saturn, I've talked a lot about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and look, we're gonna keep talking about, astrologers are gonna keep talking about it all year because it's being triggered all year, this thing. And this is a really huge year. It's a really huge reformation. It's a reformation of the way that we've lived on planet Earth and how we need to now live to adapt and to hopefully survive these huge changes that are happening. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn can serve as a blockbuster, you know, because Capricorn in a way is a kind of building block. You know, Capricorn is about building, and Saturn and Pluto is about the disassembly or the falling apart of, or the transformation of. So we can use it in that way. I think that that's a positive way to use it. So the other thing that's really on our side is that Uranus goes direct, has gone direct today. It's been going retrograde for several months, and today it's going direct. So again, because it's happening on the day of the lunar eclipse, on the day of this full moon, then it's going to be emphasized, it's going to be amplified. It means that it's activated. And Uranus is very much about evolutionary shifts, like a satori, like just comes out of the blue, this sudden understanding or this sudden concept that helps you understand something better. And so that's on our side as well. It does mean that there are sudden changes, that it's not something you can go and read a list and then change your mind about. It happens on almost an electronic level or electric level. Uranus is to do with our energy bodies as well, and the frequency of our energy bodies. And so Uranus going direct can assist us in doing the shift that we really need to do right now. So on another note, one of the things I found really fascinating, I've been working quite a lot lately with the black moon Lilith, which is another astronomical point. It's a mathematical point. And I've been reading about it and trying to understand it more and more. I just found it fascinating that in the last few days that the whole Harvey Weinstein court hearing has been in the news a lot. He's been going into the court with his big walking frame, and outside there's been these amazing demonstrations with young women all getting together and wearing black and wearing red, just red highlights in their outfits, and doing these incredible, very beautifully coordinated, very tribal, very powerful, feminine dances together, and chanting and music. And it's so powerful. And I really think that this is Black Moon Lilith being triggered. And Black Moon Lilith is currently conjunct the Chiron. And now Chiron, some of you may know, or maybe you don't, but Chiron is the asteroid of the wounded healer. So it usually shows us anything in our own lives or anything in our collective lives that is a wound that needs to be healed so that we can behave in a more congruent and a more unified way, which is hopefully in this Aquarian age that we're entering into, is what we want. We want, to get together as a living force on the planet to change the way we've been operating. And this includes the way we've sidelined women, the way women have been abused and sidelined, and the whole huge movement of women now having a voice, starting to have a voice with the hashtag Me Too movement, which was the catalyst for that was Harvey Weinstein. Thank you very much, and enjoy the Cancer Lunar Eclipse.